It didn't just power a tractor, it powered a movement. When John Deere introduced the 466 cubic inch turbocharged diesel engine in the 4630 in 1973, it marked a turning point not just for the company, but for farming across North America. But it was 5 years later, inside the legendary 4440, that the 466 truly earned its place in history. That tractor, fitted with a refined version of the same engine, became so successful it earned the nickname the tractor that won the West. The 466 was part of Deere's push to modernize everything. It was powerful, smoother running than older diesels, and built to work in harmony with Deere's new SoundGuard body, an integrated cab that set a new standard for comfort in farm equipment. Compared to the rattling tin boxes that came before it, this was a tractor you could spend a full day in without feeling beat to hell. Farmers noticed. The 4440 was rated at 130 PTO horsepower, but the 466 underneath had far more to give. It wasn't unusual for operators to turn up the pump and squeeze out 160 or more, and the engine could handle it. It gained a reputation for taking abuse, running hot, pulling hard, and just plain lasting. Whether or not it was technically overbuilt, it sure felt like it when you ran one. And this engine didn't live in just one machine. It powered the 4640, 4840, and later 50 series tractors like the 4450. For more than a decade, it formed the backbone of John Deere's diesel lineup. More than anything, the 466 proved that a tractor engine could be tough and civilized. It delivered real pulling power, better manners, and the kind of reliability that built loyalty for life. While other engines came and went, the DT466 just kept showing up, decade after decade, in fields, on roads, and anywhere diesel power was needed. Introduced by International Harvester in the early 1970s, this 466 cubic inch inline six wasn't flashy, but it didn't have to be. It was reliable, rebuildable, and incredibly versatile. What made it revolutionary wasn't brute force, it was serviceability. With its wet sleeve design, 7 main bearings, and in-frame rebuild capability, the DT466 became a favorite among farmers, mechanics, and fleet operators alike. You could pull a liner, swap injectors, even rebuild the whole engine right in the barn or shop, without splitting the tractor. Sure, earlier versions had issues, especially when IH pushed the turbocharging a little too far during the horsepower wars. Crankshafts cracked, bearings failed, but over time, IH refined the platform, reinforced the weak points, and turned the DT466 into one of the longest-lasting diesels in North America. It powered everything from the 1066 and 1086 tractors to school buses, silage trucks, and mid-duty rigs. Some farmers racked up over 12,000 hours. Some truckers had 1,000,000 miles. And more than a few mechanics will tell you how they've worked on everything, but they trust the DT466 the most. In a world of throwaway engines, the DT466 stood for something different. It didn't just power through fields, it outlived the machines it was bolted to. In the race to farm more acres with fewer passes, the Cummins 855 Big Cam arrived at just the right time. Borrowed from the trucking world and stuffed into Steigers, Versatiles, and other four-wheel drive giants, this 14-liter inline-six delivered the kind of brute force torque that helped modern farming scale up, fast. What made the 855 a game-changer wasn't just size. It was the Big Cam system, a redesigned camshaft that laid the groundwork for step timing control in later versions. By changing valve lift and duration, the engine improved airflow and combustion efficiency without giving up the torque farmers needed in the field. Matched with a proven PT fuel system, the Big Cam delivered a broad, usable power band that made it perfect for heavy tillage. Out on the wheat fields of the High Plains and Canadian prairies, it earned a reputation for running all day, season after season, without flinching, as long as it was maintained. The last part mattered. The Big Cam demanded clean oil, timely valve adjustments, and properly tuned injectors. Neglect those and things could go south fast. But for farmers who kept up with maintenance, the engine routinely logged 10,000 plus hours before major work was needed. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't new tech for tech's sake. It was big, brutal torque made reliable at a time when farming needed exactly that. The Cummins 855 Big Cam didn't just meet the moment, It defined it. The Detroit Diesel 8V71 wasn't like anything farmers had heard before. Literally. With its screaming two-stroke V8 design, the engine earned its nickname, the Screamin' Jimmy, the moment it hit full throttle. At 568 cubic inches, the 8V71 was compact for its power class and relied on a roots blower to force air through the cylinders. That made it ideal for high revving, high horsepower applications, like pulling massive implements across the wheat fields of Montana and the Dakotas. What made it revolutionary wasn't just sound or speed. It was modular, rebuildable, and already proven in military and highway service. Farmers could find parts anywhere. Mechanics knew how to work on it. And with over 300 horsepower on tap, it felt like the future had arrived. The 8V71 thrived in custom and specialty tractors like the Big Bud 525/50 and 747, where it ran wide open at full load. On operations that understood how to keep RPMs high and airflow steady, it was a monster of reliability and brute power. But it came with a warning. Treat it like a low RPM workhorse and it would choke. This wasn't a casual diesel, it was a racehorse. When run hard and maintained properly, it earned a place in history. The 8V71 didn't change the average farm, but it redefined what diesel performance could be. Loud, fast, and unforgiving, it was a revolution in a cast iron block. The Perkins A6.354 wasn't flashy. It didn't scream like a Detroit or pull like a Cummins, but it didn't need to. What it brought to farming was something far more important: quiet, stubborn reliability. Launched in 1960, the A6.354 was a 5.8-liter inline six-cylinder diesel designed for one thing: hard work. With around 120 horsepower and a torque curve that came on strong at low RPMs, it had exactly what farmers needed to run plows, balers, combines, and loaders without fuss. It was a naturally aspirated engine that thrived on simplicity and toughness, with a wet sleeve design that made in-frame rebuilds cheap and easy. But where the A6.354 really made its name was inside Massey Ferguson tractors. From the MF 1100 and 1130 to the 2675 and even early MF 399s, this engine became the backbone of Massey Ferguson's global lineup. It didn't just serve North America, it powered tractors from Canada to Kenya. In many countries, it was the first serious diesel engine farmers ever trusted. It wasn't perfect. Starting could be tough in cold climates, and some early heads had cracking issues. But the fixes were simple and widely known. More importantly, the engine never pretended to be anything it wasn't. It was built for long days, rough fields, and owners who wanted to wrench it themselves. By the time production ended in the mid-1990s, over 1 million units had been built, and to this day, thousands are still running. Because for a whole generation of farmers, the Perkins A6.354 wasn't just an engine, it was the reason they got the job done. In the middle of the horsepower race of the 1970s, Allis Chalmers needed an answer, and they found it in the 426. This turbocharged inline-six diesel wasn't just a bigger engine. It was a bold move to keep Allis relevant in a market that was demanding more muscle, more torque, and more hours out of every machine. Officially rated at 426 cubic inches, the engine made its mark in tractors like the 7000 series and 8000 series, where it delivered PTO horsepower ranging from about 100 to over 180 depending on the model and year. It brought Allis into direct competition with the heavyweights from Deere and International Harvester, both of whom were also scaling up their diesels. The 426 wasn't perfect. Early versions struggled with cooling issues, and some farmers found them temperamental if pushed too far outside their power band. But when they were tuned right and maintained well, they had plenty of torque and were more than capable of pulling big implements through tough soil. Later improvements in the 8000 series helped refine the design, making it more reliable and user-friendly. What makes the 426 revolutionary isn't that it was the best engine in its class, but that it was a turning point. It represented Allis Chalmers' serious push into modern high-horsepower diesel farming, and it gave Orange loyalists a reason to stick around in a time when competition was fierce. It wasn't just an engine, it was a survival strategy in cast iron. By the early 1970s, Ford had something to prove. The The company had built plenty of solid, dependable tractors, but when it came to serious horsepower, they needed a flagship engine that could pull with the big boys. Enter the Ford 401 diesel, a 6.6-liter inline-six that didn't just level the playing field, it helped tip it in Ford's favor. First showing up in the 8600 and 9600, the 401 came in both naturally aspirated and turbocharged versions. The turbo models pushed PTO horsepower well over 150, and in the right setup, north of 180. But what farmers really noticed was the torque. The 401 didn't just make power, it held on to it. Thanks to a cross-flow head and solid engineering, this engine delivered strong torque rise and steady pulling under load, exactly what heavy fieldwork demanded. More importantly, it was reliable. The 401 earned a reputation for lasting thousands of hours with basic maintenance, and when something did go wrong, it wasn't overly complex to fix. That sweet spot between durability and serviceability helped Ford grow a fiercely loyal base of blue tractor fans, especially in the Midwest and Great Plains. The engine didn't disappear either. It became the backbone of Ford's TW series and laid the groundwork for the power plants that would eventually drive the Genesis and PowerStar lines. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't experimental, but it was rock solid, and for a lot of farmers, that was revolutionary enough. Some engines make headlines, others make history one field at a time. The Cummins 8.3-liter diesel did both, quietly, reliably, and with just enough grunt to power through nearly anything you threw at it. With 505 cubic inches, 6 cylinders, and a mechanical fuel system that was nearly bulletproof, the 8.3 was a masterclass in balanced design. First appearing in the late 1980s and early 1990s, it became a cornerstone of Case IH's Magnum tractors. Models like the 7230, 7240, and 7250. These weren't just good tractors, they were game changers, and a big part of that came down to what was under the hood. The 8.3 wasn't flashy, it wasn't experimental, but it made real-world power, up to 260 horsepower in some later models, with torque that came on early and stuck around all day. The cast iron block, mid-stop liners, and whole-set turbo gave it longevity in the field, while the rebuildable design made it a favorite in shops. And as emission standards tightened, Cummins kept evolving the platform. First with caps injection, then high-pressure common rail, without losing what made the engine dependable in the first place. You'd find the 8.3 not just in Case IH Magnums, but in New Holland TGs, Agco Whites, and even industrial machines. It was everywhere, and it rarely let anyone down. In an era where versatility and uptime started to matter more than just brute force, the 8.3 didn't just meet expectations, it quietly redefined them. Not every engine that revolutionized farming came with a roar. Some just showed up, did the work, and kept doing it, season after season, decade after decade. That's the story of the Case 451 diesel. No gimmicks, no flash, just a 7.4-liter inline-six that became the muscle behind a generation of American farms. Launched in the early 1960s, the 451 was best known for powering Case's 1030 series tractors. With around 100 PTO horsepower, it delivered the kind of steady, reliable pull that farmers counted on when the job had to get done, no excuses. It was naturally aspirated, liquid-cooled, and fed by a mechanical injection system, meaning there was very little to go wrong and plenty that could be fixed in the barn with a decent socket set and a little know-how. Its long 5-inch stroke gave it great low-end torque, making it perfect for heavy drawbar work like plowing and tillage. And it was built to last. Farmers quickly learned they could rack up thousands of hours without a rebuild as long as they kept the fluids clean and the filters swapped. The 451 didn't rewrite any engineering books. What it did was anchor Case tractors during a time when reliability was everything. And in doing so, it built a reputation for quiet strength. A no-drama, no-fuss kind of engine that proved just how far simple, solid design could go. Sometimes the quiet revolutions are the ones that matter the most. When John Deere set out to build a diesel engine that could power everything from mid-sized tractors to forestry harvesters, they didn't just make one engine, they made a whole family. And at the heart of it sits the PowerTech 6.8L, a 415 cubic inch inline six that quietly became one of the most important engines of modern agriculture. Introduced in the early 2000s, the 6.8L was designed for versatility. It wasn't meant for one flagship model. It was meant to go everywhere. From the 6M and 6R series tractors to industrial loaders and forestry equipment, this engine found a home in just about every corner of Deere's lineup. Power output varies significantly by application and model year, from around 100 horsepower in earlier ag configurations to as much as 300 horsepower in high-performance or industrial variants. The architecture includes a cast-iron block, replaceable wet sleeves, and a modular design that makes repairs easier and swaps more efficient. What really set the 6.8L apart, though, was how it kept evolving. Different iterations met Tier 3, Interim Tier 4, Final Tier 4, and Stage 5 emission standards, using everything from cooled EGR and diesel particulate filters to selective catalytic reduction and variable geometry turbos, all while keeping uptime high and operating costs manageable. The result? An engine that doesn't just keep up with changing regulations, it powers right through them. Rugged, adaptable, and proven in the real world, the PowerTech 6.8L is the kind of engine that doesn't need a spotlight. It earns its place in the field.